I think I realised, probably when I was 17 or 18, I realised that my father's story, which is the story of someone coming from the subcontinent to Britain, from a middle-class family, to make a new life in Britain, I realised that his story wasn't only personal. It occurred to me that his story stood for a wider migration, obviously, and that some of the things that we as a family were going through, to do with racism, to do with questions about identity, etc., and what I, in particular, was going through at school, I began to see that this was a good way of pinning together what was personal, the family, and political, and that this was something that I wanted to do. This was an opportunity. I also saw that nobody else was writing about this, that this was a huge subject that in a way nobody much had noticed yet, that they were about to notice, that in fact, and obviously you can't say this until later, that we were living through a revolution, which was to do with the way that Britain was completely changing between the end of the war and obviously the present, in terms of its racial makeup and in terms of the way it saw itself. So you might take your family story as being representative, and then you would pin it to a political outlook. So yes, I began to see that in my family there was something that was important. But you have to have craft, you have to have talent, and you have to be able to shape this material. When you begin to write, you are, as it were, reinventing what you think the novel might do, i.e. this stuff hadn't been in books before that I'd read. I was interested in pop, I was interested in drugs, I was interested in political dissent of the 60s. I was interested in race, racism, etc., sexuality. And you think, well, how do I get all this into a book? How do I make this into one story? These are all the things that are whirling around in my head. It's not so much confidence, really, as a sort of madness. You sit down and try and make a story out of this material. And you sit down for a long time and work out how to do it. And in the end, it became The Buddha of Suburbia, which I didn't publish until probably around the age of 30, but I've been writing that damn book since I was a teenager. What I'm looking for, I think, are characters that I can inhabit, characters that I believe that I know in some way. And it would be not just one character, it would be a set of characters. I mean, a novel, a story, a film is a situation and a set of characters, all of whom would represent in some way different parts of yourself, I guess. You know, as in a dream, you'd have to say all the elements would be bits of you. And what you're doing is writing a story, sort of arguing these bits together until you've worked something out in your head. But also have done something, made something that somebody else wants, if you're lucky. I mean, when I'm teaching writing, I would always emphasize the fact that, you know, we're in showbiz. This is an entertainment. This isn't therapy. We're not just writing this as an exercise. It's to speak to somebody else.